serve and protect. It's a dark season still, even if it's a new year. So I want you to set up so that you will be able to help open up the chest, the heart, the breathing kind of reservoir. So place a blanket roll, make sure it's in a pretty substantial tube at the bottom. You don't want it flat. Bolster on top, straight up, so it creates a ramp for your spine. And then a blanket on top of that. You get to select kind of your height, really, of your blankets, because sometimes you might want less. So if you need to slide the blanket on the top off, that's fine. But let's place blocks under the legs. We're going to sit in front of the bolster. And the bolster is as close as it could be. I'm not on it, but I definitely find that when I observe people in practice, they tend to be just a little bit forward of it. So place it so it's kind of, I think people push it back because maybe you feel like it'll be easier on your back muscles. But what we do to help our back muscles is open our chest muscles. So let's take our belt, it's buckled up in a big loop. And if it's too big, it's easy to shorten it, but if it's not, you got to make it bigger. So place it overhead around your hips, like you got a little kind of hula hoop. Take a moment to hula hoop with your belt, and then reach it. Now, I sometimes find this fun is if I have my belt kind of high up on my center rib space. It's higher than I'm going to need it. I know that, but I pull, and then I work on the breath in the rib cage, inhaling, expand. And then as I exhale, I lean forward and place the belt, hook it around my feet that are soles to sole. And then I'm going to loosen this up enough so my belt can easily situate, not on my sit bones, but at the lower than low back, right? It's really around the sacrum. You know, maybe eyebrows of the buttocks is too high for us. So go low with the belt. So it feels like it's about ready to, you can use your thumbs to push it down. And as you get ready to guide back, get your sand. So some of us like sand on our feet and not on our ribs. So this would be a time you can either add that sandbag to your feet, or if you know you're going to place it on the ribs, first things first is to lower back, okay, and let that arch, you know, it's pretty substantial. You'll feel it's kind of digging pressure. So at first I feel like there's quite a bit of movement in my lower back to create the support. So I use the blocks, I tilt them at the upper outer thigh. My feet are really pulled in with the belt. I have quite a full tension on my belt today. You can always loosen it, okay? The belt actually calms the nervous system. It's because of the pressure, the pulling, the touch on the connective tissue. But if it doesn't feel good to you, and of course, if you lose sensation and get numb, then you got to loosen your belt. Don't go that far. But those of us that are sand rib gathering, right? You can add the sand across, or you can go sand from heart to belly. And find that the sand might be a little lower today because of this belt concentration. So when we do like horizontal chest opener poses, your sand is probably a lot higher, even if you have it across. It's just easier when the ribs broaden. But in this position, we're not only working on our ribs, we're actually, more importantly, working on our hips, our pelvic floor, our lower back, our kidneys. There's just more to it. So as I bring the arms out, I'm going to first lift up the arms besides me so that I can feel kind of the tenderness of my shoulders centering back. And then as the inhalation progresses, it's a short spurt of motion inside. As you exhale, let the arms rest down and feeling that you're even on the intensity. So if one arm goes higher than the other with ease, find it balanced, which could mean, if we were looking at your arms, which we're not, One arm might be a little higher than the other. So I want you to find that each arm gets the work in the moment. So the shoulders take time with gravity to ease back. Let your eyes close. If you prefer an eye pillow, place it over the eyes. And even if the sandbag feels pretty easy for you, it certainly is strengthening the breathing muscles to simply have weight on the pathway of breath. You almost can feel where your breath has to move inside the muscles that move for you to receive oxygen. You can feel that when you have weight on the tissues. So that just allows us to be a little bit more internal and meditative and tending to our inner reserves. But even if you start practice with a little bit of hype inside, just when we start, there's distraction before. Notice the internal awareness. Maybe that's distracting. Maybe the belly, sounds in the belly perhaps, or settling, receiving the nourishment from our practice. Now with that inhale through the nostrils, just moisturize and warm up the air as it guides in, and as you exhale, notice if that's warming, if it's cooling, if it's more of a shedding. Just allowing those shoulders to be centered back. Slide the hands down so they're closer to your hips. And even here, there's a difference in the spine from the moment before, just the attention, which has the word tension in it. So it's clearly awareness. Okay, and so we have kind of this front area, a little bit of flushing and movement of the breath. So let's start to guide that circulation down into the hips a little further. So slide any sand away. If you have it on your feet, you'll be able to just nudge it off of your feet when we change our felt. So don't worry about that. But slide the sand away and then unbuckle where your buckle could be. Who knows? If it's close to your feet, just slide it up. And again, see if you can do less kind of moving all your things. Just let them be. You don't need your belt to be put on the side yard. You can just unbuckle it. It's fine. And then as I slide the knees, draw them together, I'm going to guide the blocks out to the sides, and they're going to be flat. Okay? You might end up putting them higher, but let's start with a little bit of efforting here on this part. So if you have a ball, get a ball. If you don't have a ball, you could use your sandbag actually next to your hip. That would be softer than like a block. So walk the feet in just a little bit. Don't go too close to your hips. Just guide so the bottoms of the feet are down is plenty. And just notice the arch of the spine and where it's archiest. Okay. I know the archiest path might be if you push the shoulders back, right? It feels like it's kind of behind the heart, but it's the most arch is at the base. That's just the reality of a spine, even though we might feel it here. that lower base has such plump vertebrae, it trends up the back. So spine is trendy. So lift up the right foot and feel if you can maneuver, okay, like you're turning the foot leg in and out, and then cross that right ankle to the left knee, okay? I tend to feel a little shift of my body, a little down on the bolster. It's tiny, but it's there's evidence it happens. And then place the ball or the sandbag. You can just put a sandbag there if you don't have a ball, or like a thick towel. You could push the ball in. I would encourage you to actually push the ball so it almost nudges your left buttock a little bit up, and then see if you can roll it a little bit under that left upper outer thigh, and then tip the knees to the left. If you've got a pretty mushy ball, you're going to be working harder on this one, I think, because you'll have a little different play with the ball, literally a little different rebound. So, and this is kind of rebounding work anyway when we use the ball, even if we're not on a trampoline. Okay, so left hand holds the right knee, and the side of my left foot is sickled, so it's turned, it's pivoting, just like if my hand was to pivot. It's probably a good exercise for our hands just to do this pivot motion. Go ahead. And then when I hold onto the knee, I'm pulling, and I try to let the left foot relax even more. I'm not trying to kind of push into my bottom foot and hold things up. Right arm either goes straight back besides your head, or it rests down besides your right hip. I'm just resting. You decide if that is energetic to reach the arm back, might be too much. The block might be something you use. You might end up placing your right foot on a block, meaning you could put it higher. I don't make it to the block. It's not happening. And part of the reason for some of us it does and it doesn't is where your ball is nudged in. So if your ball is a little bit to your buttock, it probably is harder to get your foot farther down, which is just fine. I want you to feel like your left hip is supported. So as you hold onto the right knee, feel the waist. Just gently use the props to help elongate the center body. And this practice is about openings, right? Not so much stretching. So we really use the props to support getting into these openings. So just feel that you spread out the circulation in the ribs. And the belly gets a little bit of a squeeze. Just a tiny bit, it's a small amount, just enough that you could relax into it. Okay, now as you start to bring the right arm down, if it's not already, you're going to shift to place the ball under the right buttock. So as I shift back forward, if I don't have a ball, there is an option. So those of us with a ball, first things first, push into your left foot. You can stay in figure four pose or place the right foot on the ground. What I like to do is push into the foot and lift up my hips, pelvic tilt. This is as pelvic tilty as you're going to get, right? If your ball is mushy, you'll be much happier because it's easier to get it under the right buttock. Okay, you don't want that too pumped up. Now uncross the right foot and then shift the hips side to side to massage into that right buttock. Basically, it's a glute field that you're moving in towards. You can tilt your knees to the right. You can keep them center and up. You could stay with the figure four. If you don't have a ball, you're going to windshield wiper. So you'll have your feet a little wider than hips distance and let the knees shift side to side. You could use your blocks as bumpers here, right? You could just place them a little lower so you don't go too far afield. And you can still stay with that spine kind of tractioning on the bolster, okay? So those of us with the ball, take a few more moments here. Try to use a little bit more body weight into the ball than maybe you're used to, like you're actually pushing into it to get that surface tension over the muscle to glide the tissues, right? It shouldn't hurt with these balls, unless you have a tennis ball, which you could use actually, but that's kind of it kind of bullies the tissues a little bit, the tennis balls do. So this is a nice comforting way to ease the tension. Okay. All right, guaranteed. Okay, so now we come back in center navel, place the ball. I would just kind of keep it at that right buttock, or use your sandbag if you don't. Scoot back if you're sliding off. I would keep the blanket on top of your bolster. If you feel like you need a little bit more, you can always fold it once more. This one, you kind of need a blanket. Left ankle to right knee, lean the knees to the right. If you feel kind of off balance on this side, it's probably because your spine went a little downwards. So you could readjust on your bolster. But hold the left knee with the right hand and feel when you grab a hold of that knee, how you guide the skin, right? So, I mean, it's true. The skin that you're in, that's what I'm in. I'm in skin. When I pull, it's just this little bit of pulling on the skin surface that then goes down from that dermal layer into the area that is feeling so tight. So you can work with breathing, you can work with the spine elongating, almost like you're trying to do a little bit of a pelvic tilt. Could be kind of interesting in this one. And then left arm stretches back, either back or besides you, or you could even use your block under your left arm. You can do all kinds of comforting options besides the arm back. And for some of us, reaching is comforting because we're able to get internally deeper with our breath, right? Really strengthening the lungs, the respiratory muscles. I mean, it's important to notice that underlying support. So for me, I feel the ball is a little not as supportive as it was on the other side. So I'm just going to move it. So instead of it being as high, I'm going to move it a little bit down my right thigh. So I'm not gripping as much in my, not in my hips, but my lower belly. So that's kind of tightening up. I want to be able to relax my breath. I suppose the more you think about it, the more you'll come up with, that's frustrating, but try to just be present with the movement quality of your breathing. Left arm could be, again, behind you, the sides and back, or just down on the floor or a block. Now, as you kind of spark up that attention in the left upper leg, right into the lower back, just pause when we shift with the ball. So you'll feel that right upper adductor, the right side will feel this nice presence of just starting to bring stretch into the inner hip. This is good base work. So when I let go of the knee, I get a hold of the ball, and if I pull it out, then I'm going to flop over, right? So I've got to guide myself back center, move the ball to the left buttock, lift up, and your knee could kind of peak, you know, the knee peaks upwards. And then as I move my hips, I'm not so concerned about now I step my foot down, but I feel just gliding across the left glute medius, so it's more on the border. The ball is so big, though, it's going to get more than just one spot, right? So I let go of the ankle crossing, and I like just to consider getting some pressure and movement into that left hip, and clearly you can move your knees over to the other side. You can shift your hips side to side. And if you don't have a ball, make sure you're back close enough to your bolster and the knees side to side. You could do windshield wiper without the bolster under your back and just flatten out. That might feel good for some of us too. So take a few more moments here. If you've got the ball under you, remember you want to find that the body has, you're pushing down your hips, right? Because your ribs are already elevated. You don't need to spend any energy. Your bolster does all of it for you there. So just let the work come into the hips movement. And as we find that direction of hips side to side, wagging your tail, or a little bit of a hula, you could do something like that, something a little more fancy of movement, but it's kind of basic pressure on the ball. And so the more you let go of kind of the grips of it all, of the pelvic floor, you'll glide across the tissues. Okay, so we're going to shift. I enjoy how we're going to pattern this one. We're going to move the ball. If you don't have a ball now, you use a block between the knees. So add the ball or the block between the knees. Squeeze into it, okay? And hands to the legs. Slide the hands to the sides of the legs and feel the natural arch of the spine. Inhale, belly full. And exhale, relax the torso. Stretch your arms back as far as they'll go comfortably. And I want you to slide the feet down and squeeze the ball so the knees aren't pointed as high up as they could be. And you're going to work on stretching the upper back forward. So lift up your head and squeeze the ball to come up to sitting. Give it a try. I mean, if it doesn't work, you can lay back down. And then squeeze the ball as you lower back to the bolster. Let your arms just lower down behind you or beside you, you choose. Okay, so the bolster's not in a perfect spot, I imagine. So instead of fixing it, let's squeeze the ball, breathe. See if you can breathe in and out as you squeeze the ball. So the muscles at the base have just an assignment and they're just gonna stay locked. Like you pushed a button, stay with the squeeze. All right, arms reach forward, squeeze. Pretend you're going to sit up. Just have it more of a visualization that you're sitting up, you're lifting up, but you stay on the bolster. And then bring your arms back overhead. Relax the squeeze on the ball or the block. Block would be difficult, I think. Okay, belly relaxes. Inhale through the nose, exhale, rest the torso. Okay. Now, when we come up this last time, I want you to get a feeling of the arms already forward. Okay, so all the energy comes into kind of actually momentum is a little bit easier, isn't it? So let's go back. Arms reaching back. Again, I want to make this easy peasy. So squeeze the ball as you sit up. Okay, and as you come up, you're going to slide the feet forward and hold under the legs, lift up through the chest, and see if you can squeeze into the blocker ball and then lift the feet up, just hovering over the ground. Don't overdo it, just a little bit of a hover. You can always pass on it if it's too much. Okay, now, once the feet lower back, you're going to remove the ball and we're going to take a sleeping sage pose. So what I want you to do is turn to your left hip and move the belt off of your mat. And we're going to pivot so that well, not pivot, we're going to twist. So I'm actually on my outer corner of my left sitting bone here when I turn. So right thigh reaches back. Some of you might need a ball here under the knee or a block. But I imagine if you can lean into your left thigh, you can turn your head to the right and hug the bolster or place the hands besides, stretching out. But let the spine feel its natural, kind of the tour of the spine with its slight twist. So we'll be here just a little short few moments, but feeling that you're now pivoting in the torso. It's a little turn. And the waist is in a twist. Yeah, same idea with rotation. But when you're in a prone rotation, it's actually kind of easy, right? You just let gravity have you. And so taking the moment of the weight into the left hip. Okay, now slide the hands back so they're at the base besides the bolster. Push, fingers spread out, And now I want us to pivot so that we're on hands and knees. And if you need a blanket under your knees, just slide it in. We won't be on the knees very long, but you might want some padding. So spreading out with the position of the knees so they're far enough apart, wider than hips distance. And we're going to arch the spine, so chest forward, and feeling the bones working. And then as you exhale, round the back, flexing, chin to chest, inhale, arching. And maybe do like 10% less than your full intensity that you've been serving yourself here. So maybe you do a little bit less, like no harsh pressure here with rounding. And mobilize, so you feel kind of a connection to the base of the brain, right, the cervical spine. So feeling what happens when I move my chin in. Yeah, just noticing that when I move my chin forward. Chin oriented, cat-cow. Chinny cat-cow. Okay, so, and I kind of forget it, just that last moment, I didn't move really much with that, the throat. So feeling a little bit of movement in your throat, chin towards chest, creating that tucking, so squeezing into the endocrine glands. Okay, now next time you come center, you're going to walk back closer to a wall. So you don't want a wall space. If your hands are getting tired, you can always come back up and shake out your hands. You can also turn the hands so the fingers turn back. This doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a stretch in your wrist. Some of us might turn the hands in. It's easier to turn the hands a little bit out on downward dog, right? Not to have to have a little turn so the index finger is straight forward. So when I hook the toes under, I curl them under, I'm gonna lift up my knees and just stretch back. Oh, I'm closer to the wall than I thought. Okay, I'm gonna stretch the hands forward and feel where there's a little bit of endurance in my arms. Now, if this is just totaling your wrists, right, you might find you can put your hands into a fist. This is a lot of work though, muscle-wise, right? It's a little more muscular. You can also go onto your elbows and lift up. If that's happening, push your bolster a little bit away and you can try that. Okay, we've all been in that trying effort with that inversion. So give a few moments here, either on your elbows or the palms, and feel the heels a little bit up at the wall. Okay, so stretching the feet. If you feel kind of ambitious here, you can try to bring the feet closer together and feel if you can get one leg at a time lifting up the wall. Just kind of slide a foot up the wall, just getting that weight bearing into the upper back, arms, shoulders. It's interesting for the neck to do this with the crown of the head down. At least you consider it as far down as it would go. And as you feel that pulse of circulation upper body, come back down to the hands and the knees, or if your elbows are down, and bring the knees apart and come back to a child's pose. Now, some of us are going to want child's pose with our bolster under our forehead. So forehead touches bolster, elbows heavy. This is a little easier version on knees. Some of us will come all the way back to our seat towards our feet, and maybe the hands stacking for our forehead. Okay, and even if your knees are tender and everything else you do but this, it's okay to practice if they don't feel that challenge when you come in or you come out of it. But just observe, right? If it's a lot on your knees, remember you can lift up the hips a bit and put your forehead on the bolster and still find that circulation here, resting the heart and spreading the back and the lower back. Take a few moments. Okay, now as we come up, we're going to take sleeping sage on the other hip. So I want you to guide your right knee to the left side of your bolster, tilt your right hip down, And it's a twist. So we push our hands down and that references up into the base of the shoulder, right? So it's kind of protecting rotator cuff energy, right? Base of the shoulder as I push, my ribs turn, and then I lower down. Head turns towards your right knee. So right ear is down. Well, of course, your right knee is down too. But you can hug your bolster or have your hands out wide. Stay. Noticing your heart rate. This is a great one for that. In a seated twist, we really don't feel the heart beat as much, do we? So noticing, relaxing the ribs, really tending to that inner circulation, and the weight into your right hip. Now first slide the hands towards your hips. They don't go that far back, do they? And as you pivot the heart towards the bolster, you can feel the significance of just leaning like this, right? Leaning down into one bent leg and how it swivels up into it creates kind of a hip swivel. So we're going to work a little bit with that seated, and it's the most challenging way to work with it. So we'll give ourselves a few moments to get here. So turn your bolster across your mat, and then you don't have to be too close to the wall, but don't be too far back because we're going to be eventually pigeoning. So I want you to have enough mat behind you, okay? So place your blankets so they're in a big stack. Stack them up. Watch out for anything else on the side yard because we're going to need it. Yeah, and maybe you need, a good amount of space behind you. Okay. All right. Now block. Get a couple of them. We'll see how we use these. But have your block in front so that the block is flat. And let's see, the last time we had was the left side body lengthening. So let's keep with that tradition. So we'll continue that work. So the right leg bends below. So that's what legs do when they're sitting. They bend. And I still like that idea of holding underneath the thighs and kind of stretching the seat so I can find a kind of platform for my pelvis and my center body. And then if you have a sandbag, get it and add it to the right thigh. Now, if you're sitting like this with the right leg bent and your knee is kind of buoyant, it's kind of bobbing, okay? Bobbing knee, then take a ball or a block and place it under the knee. So I think some of us will find that our knee can go down, but when the knee goes down and if you feel a little bit contorted in the spine, it's the subtle work you learn in time, right? Oh, I'm pulling a little bit on this little area of my nerve, so you'll notice if your knee is up with the ball. For me, I feel a little bit more just a little more equilibrium here in my base thoracic. So for some of us, we like to have our knee on the ground, I think too. But that's might be overdoing it for our spine. So the left knee is reaching out, and I want you to actually lean forwards. right? So your knee is going to push into the ball anyhow, even if it's on it, it's not going to bounce up at all. And bring the hands back. Now, if you find you can reach your hands together, interlacing your fingers and stretching them up, okay, fine. Okay, I can do that with some restrictions. So I like to have a belt, and I just hold on to it simply and spread the arms a little bit apart so that when I lean forward, I have more stretch in my chest, right? So even if you can bring the hands together and lift them, I think sometimes, not to say this is going to be a disservice to you, but the idea of getting to what's the edge of the pose, you might be actually making things tighter because you're just restricted, right? Around the rotator cuff, some of us just in the front parts, it's really tight here. We can't quite get that lift. So work on the arms moving down low and lifting up. And first things, feeling the spread, the collarbones. This feels better for me to be right here, and then little tilt. So it's a bigger stretch. It's a greater stretch across the collar. Okay, and you might tilt your ear towards the shoulder. And just feeling that guidance of openness of the chest. And we all can use that, right? So as far as it goes, it might feel pinchy for some of us to use the belt. It might be a lot of work, but you can spread the hands out farther on the belt. And you can let go of the belt. That's fine too. And reach the hands back as if you're holding your elbows. Try to get them. Your forearms. Or your two arms. And lean forward. Okay. Now come back on up. So this might be kind of simple hip stuff for you. And we'll take that twist again. So this is interesting. The last twist we did was the sleeping twist. So when you turn left, right, you're reaching the right hand to the left knee and the left hand back to the blanket and turn. Okay, those of us that want to advance on, then what I want you to do is you'd move the ball away if you have it, and you would step the left foot on the other side of the right knee. You really keep the right foot close to the bolster, kind of tuck it to push it a little bit into the bolster, and then right elbow to left leg and twist. The left hand could either be on blanket here or wrap it around to the sandbag handle. That's really nice to do. And then you can kind of spark up a little bit of debate here in the rib stretching, the turn. Kind of a tourniquet effect here. Breathing muscles. Yeah. So feeling where the waist now has the opportunity to be inspired by the inhale. And on the exhale, it's that rotation using the arms. And even if it feels like mostly right arm does the work, there has to be some consideration and some commitment from that left rib cage and arm to help you rotate. Right, that wide swath of tissues in the left side of the back. Try to get some breathing room. Right, are you in the Zoom room or the breathing room? You know, just scanning where you feel the stretch. This is an interesting one as far as awareness. It's not areas we normally crave to stretch, okay? It's quite a bit on the shoulder. So when you let go of the left hand's position behind you, you're gonna rotate. And I want you to let that right arm, whether your foot is on the block or it's across, let the right arm cross in front of the chest, the left hand reach to the right elbow, and you're gonna just let the arm lower a little bit so you can stretch the right deltoid, but turn the chest towards the front, right? So center the chest, upper right arm feels it, and you don't have to get the arm as high as possible, right? So kind of soften. It's going to push into your chest a bit. And you don't want to get too chest driven on this. So bend the elbow. If your left hip is getting tired, you can put the foot on the block. Okay. Relax the grip, let the arm lower, roll the shoulders. Okay, and feel this upper beam in the chest. Okay, and as you take that sand off the right thigh, we're going to bring the left leg back to pigeon for the right hip. That's funny, I don't think I've ever said that, pigeon for the right hip. It's the right pigeon. Okay, left leg stretches back, and the toes can curl under or they can be flat. It's nice to do the basics first, just to feel the top of the foot on the ground. I don't feel the top of my foot on the ground very often. All right, so if I lean into this on the wrists, I might want to use the ribs to stretch to the wall. I like blocks on this one for this moment. Some of us will lower down to the elbows, which is a little more of a stretch in your hip. If you find it's easy to endure that, go for it. But it's okay to have a little bit of a lift in the arms. If you dump down farther to the elbows on the floor, just be aware of the abdominal reach with the breath. You want to find, okay, I can still lengthen my torso. Sometimes the forearms on the blocks can help you kind of activate. I know they still kind of drop. The torso still droops a bit here. So I'm trying to pull my waist a little forward. The skin stretches forward. And just be. What might be nice on this, instead of the blocks, would be like if you have another bolster or a big pillow, you could put under your torso. A couch cushion. Has to be kind of pushy, and firm to support the waist to stretch. Now I'm going to try one thing before we come out of it. I like using the ball for my diaphragm stretching. I'm doing some work with that, playing around with it. You have to go kind of low, huh? But you can get that ball. This is just free play here on the block, and bring the palms down, stretch right at the diaphragm attachment, right? So it'd be right at the xiphoid process here. So it's going to be kind of at the base of the sternum, right? That can feel kind of iffy for breathing, but it's a nice kind of balloon effect. Okay. All right. So that's just for fun. All right. So coming out, you would want to use something soft, right? You don't want to use like a block on a block into your diaphragm. It needs to be something pliable. So as I lean into my right hip, I'm going to come out, and I think a little bit of shakeout would be good, or just tapping the legs. This is sometimes just as good as like shaking the legs, getting your heels of your hands right up onto the bones and the sides. And then the hands kind of tapotment is what it's called in massage, tapotment. You are trying to slap. Okay, so let's switch it around. So let's bring the left foot so it tucks in, and the right foot goes on top of the block. The sand goes to the left thigh, and this time a little different. So lift up the chest. You can always put your hand on the heart and get a sense of what is it lifting, right? The side, it's like my head pushes, my jaw pushes, but this is probably a little sunken. Okay, so feel if you close your eyes, it might be nice to let your hands rest onto the legs. Feel the shoulders center back. Try to get them back in that lift before we twist, okay? So the spine might feel a little tired when you do this for a few, over 10 seconds. It's a little kind of, it's grippy. Okay, so now I want you to try that turn to the right. So I know some of you didn't use the block under your foot, but first things first, just reach for the right knee with the left hand. And then noticing how this kind of broadens out this whole, corridor in the center of the body. So when I turn, if I have my foot in front, it's kind of, I get a little wider reach as I twist. So I like the twist with block personally quite a bit. I understand the effects on the organs when the foot is closer and tucked into the outside of the other leg. So I think they're both pretty good. But when I turn, you might find, wow, I get a lot of twist if I start with my chest up. So that's what I want you to understand, is that spinal column, its natural curves are really defined here. And then when I turn, I've got a lot of height in my back, and I can actually turn more. Okay. All right, so a little more suppleness and basically elasticity of the breathing muscles. That's why. Those of you that want to go further, you're going to cross the right leg. You might have to turn entirely forward to get that right foot over. I know some of you, I forgot to say, might have your ball under your knee and be here. Okay, you could even do this one holding your sandbag handle. You don't have to have your foot on the other side of your knee if you want to hold the sandbag handle. Okay, I can't tell you what to do with the sandbag handle, but I have my hip kind of supported with the sand. I try to get a good hip under here. Okay, so as I twist, reach for the sandbag. If you've got one, hook that left elbow to the right leg. Yeah, sometimes if you start with that chest up and you turn, it's nice to feel how the abdominals get this circulation. Twists are about the organs, right? The spine takes care of itself in the twist. It's loving it. Okay, so when I rotate, happy spine to a happy spine this year. So feel the left arm do a little bit of energy pushing. Most of us, when we use our arm, we push with our palm forward or grab things, use the bicep. But this is the back of the arm, this back flesh. So I want you to press and turn, try to keep the chest lifting. You can have your hand on the blanket or holding the sandbag. Breathe. Maybe closing your eyes. Okay, relax any kind of clenching in the inner thigh, right? They grip to get you to turn. So when you come back forward, take the right foot maybe to the block, the right arm across the chest. Right arm is reaching a little bit to the left side. My left hand holds the right elbow and presses it in. And get a feeling when you have the hand to that right arm that you're pushing and trying to ascend up at the heart again, right? So feeling when the arm is touched onto, that you get to decide or prescribe the intensity. So if you loosen up the pressure with the left hand, that's okay. If you push it with it a little deeper, breathing, it only helps. Okay, now loosen up that grip and take the sand off and move your right leg back. You choose if you're going to use blocks or floor for your arms. You're going to make that choice with time. And if you thought, well, that idea with the ball and the block was pretty good, well, you could try it. You might find your second side, there's differences. Like there's subtle things and you're wondering, I can't get lower, or it all matters, right? All the things that we do, all the different variations. So feel where the waist centers down. Breathing. Your elbows could be on the ground. Your elbows could be on blocks. If you do have the ball right centered, right at the base of the chest area, focus on breathing so you're actually trying to push into the ball. And the push into the ball is on the exhale. That's the interesting part. And again, you don't have to use this idea with the ball at all. You can have your elbows on the blocks. Okay. So feeling where the left hip has the circulation. It could be kind of dull in the hips. You might feel like if you don't move much in the torso, it's a little bit different. And so we have our ways to kind of get by, I guess, in these poses. Sometimes we activate movement in the hips. Sometimes we keep it pretty dull so we can just center on the area that's tight. Just asking for the right amount for yourself today. Now, interesting here, there's a pretty good arch in our spine. What does that mean, right? It's kind of it's because we're on a bolster. You could do any of these, this one without a bolster if you want it. Deeper stretch in the hip, but this is a really safe way to do this shape for my knee joint. I'm not crushing the knee, right, with the bolster under my torso. So we're going to come out of this and we're going to actually go into legs up. So we are using the bolster for this one. And so when you come on up and you swing the right leg forward, hardy legs after all that work. Okay, so I want you to have your belt and you might as well buckle it up. And I was playing with this inversion idea of having the blankets different. So I just want to give you an idea about it. I came around with thinking the reason it's an inversion is that there's some big difference between the blanket and the bolster height. So this is what I did. So I'd have my blankets, I'd still use two, you could do this, and have them lengthwise under your back. Okay, it's different sensation. I'm just going to give you a vision of that. You still have your tailbone at the end and your legs go up. Okay, it's different. It's a different strength too. I'm going to go with I guess you could say the old school version, which is technically what an inversion is there's more space, a gap. So it's considered an inversion. They both are, but I want you to make that decision. So I'm going to have one folded blanket at the back, and then make sure your ball's nearby if you have a ball and all your things, and then come back with legs up. You choose. You know, if you find you're a little sore from, or you haven't done the practice for a bit, you might like the two blankets. I've adapted to this one for so long that it's just second nature to me to have this deeper arch, I guess. So it feels kind of like I'm missing something when I have the two blankets. It's some energy I'm using right in my core. So you can try it. I think it's worth trying. And then you can be the decider. Okay. So let's get sand on the feet. And we're going to do two poses today with sandy feet. One will be at wall, one will be here. It's a little bit more, strengthening. So, because you don't have a wall to lean into. So if it's tough for you to get your sand on the feet, maybe someone's around, you can have them help you out. But when you lift up your feet, you can do the reach of the balls of the feet with the sand. So that can be interesting. So my sand right now is not perfect, but I'm working on the feeling effect of pushing my feet a little out on the sand. So there's some resistance. And then really strengthening around my knees. I love this pose for my knee health. So this is a major player in my life, is reducing any fluid retention. I mean, that happens to protect yourself, right? That's why it occurs around a knee. But here I'm working on flushing out the legs, flushing out the lymph. And if you happen to have a second sandbag, you could put on your ribs. There's always use for more sandbags or a bag of rice. But take the moment where your hands rest on the kind of central torso below the rib cage, right where it can sometimes be, if you were to like tap it with your fingers, it might feel slightly tender, but just let the palms rest open so that you're using your hands as a source of support, right? As an energetic awareness, right? Feeling what's inside there with the movement of breath, massaging the organs. If you have the blanket stacked under your spine, you might like it, you might not. Just something you could give a try. So rest your eyes. Now, when the legs get loaded, right, we're loading up the circulation kind of throughout. But what's interesting, right, is the blood pressure in the feet kind of lowers and lowers, and it goes reversing the flow back to the heart and the lungs, and actually giving the heart a rest. So the heart rate slows down. That's for sure. The blood pressure lowers. So let's get our belt and make sure it's buckled. You got a big loop. It's bigger than the last loop you made. So if you're just measuring it from the last one, loosen that up. You can always tighten it. So as I really have dependency for both feet up right now. I can't quite go one or the other with sand. So when I observe kind of the rule of the ribs, I have all of my seat and parts of, obviously pelvis is on bolster too. Lumbar spine, okay, is on the bolster, right? I've got a lift. And so as I bend the knees, and I want you to be, cautious here with the sand support. So feel once you bend, the knees go a little bit apart. You're going to reach as high up as you can with your hands, grasp onto the sand, and then your heels are going to lower down and your feet come to the floor as you put your sand. Actually, you could keep it, I would keep it on the bolster. Just put it on the bolster on the left side so I'm all ready. And it's easier to move over. Okay. Will it stay on the bolster? Okay. So, take your belt under your right foot, get ready for brain float. And let's place the sand now on the left side. It was in its little holding pattern there, waiting to find a leg to be on. Okay, so when you reach down, best choice would be if my foot was at the wall. Okay, didn't set up for it, but if you want to reset yourself a little bit, foot at the wall would be wonderful for you. So your foot's going to likely rotate out if it's not at the wall. It's just going to happen. So do the best you can. You can actually purposely lift your heel and turn your foot in a little bit, and then slide the sand down. Orient the sand so it supports that foot angle. Grab your belt and reach it to the crown of your head. This should be long enough of a big loop. Lift your head. Tuck the belt under the back of your head so it supports, and be sure it's tight enough, right? You don't want it so loose that you're grasping with your neck muscles to hold your head up. Oh, that's the worst. So if I touch the sides of my neck, you can feel just the right amount of tone. It's interesting. It's a little tone from the ear down, and that muscle can get so tight. So I'm going to let my head nod a little side to side. Let my head lean back. Let it keep leaning to my delight. And then use that belt. Let the arms be where it's comfortable. For some of us out, some of us behind us with the arms, some down by the sides. Okay, so let's take this brain float on the right leg up to create that traction through the neck. Feel the shoulders centering back. Breathing. And this really blends the muscles and then the soothing effect from the inversion. So you have, the quality of the pressure with the leg lifting and pulling. And using the body parts to help kind of the laboratory of the body to receive that balancing. Now, if you have sand, you're going to slide that up to your lower belly, across. See what your coordination is, right? So maybe bend the right knee, lift the left foot up. Who knows? You might be able to switch it on your own, but you might need a hand behind your head. Okay, so adjust the belt when the second leg goes up, and you're on the second leg now. So the belt is at the center. The occiput is usually what we say to go to with the belt, but that's the shelf at the back of your head. It's the attachment. It's the attachment of the trapezius. That's where it inserts. If you could call your muscles, right, your parts, they kind of are like that. It's amazing how the interchange is there from the brain stem, right? But you've got the trapezius attachment right at the occiput. So it goes up, it feels like it goes up into your skull, right? That muscle that's at the upper back, that's so brick-like. So this is interesting. I have my belt a little higher, and then I feel a nice squeeze at my throat for circulation into the endocrine glands. Sometimes I'm not so concerned about how my leg is, if the foot is up or not. If you've got a wall, again, it's better. But I just want my knee to feel good. So it's like anything I can get the circulation in the quad to stretch out, reach the hip flexor. Can only go so far because you've got a foot. You have a floor below you, right? Okay. Yeah, a little caution for those of us that are hyperextenders, right? By nature. Maybe you have to feel how you can get that micro bend and the attachment at the hamstring, feeling it kind of sweeps down and it settles there. And then you just let the arms be. You can definitely focus in certain spots of the body, not just the obvious places that are in the mechanics of this, but even the soft spot, right? The throat, the lower abdominals. Okay, now feeling where the pressure is in the connection of the belt, right? It's clearly at the base of you, it's at the bottom of you, which is looking like it's the top right now. And then it straps around, right? The top of you, what you think of as the top of you, right? So it's an interesting kind of cranial foot support, isn't it? It's an interesting swoop. And it bypasses the sacrum, right? So that's going to be in the loop of circulation. Okay. All right, let's slide the sand away and bring the hands to the belt. And you're going to slide it off your head and let your head rest on your blanket. And, you know, this whole time, some of you may have had the blankets along the spine. You can do the whole thing with blankets on the spine too. It's just different. This creates a little more, I think, strength with the blanket under your head than under your spine. But anyway, let's have our feet in the belt wide. Have a little bend in the knees. Be sure that there's no harsh pivot with the toes in. So you might find just doing a little bit of extra work at creating that V, that reach, slight micro bend. I think your knees are going to be okay with it, whether you keep them pretty straight or not. You can always just put a little touch on the front of the knee and keeping that support there. Just the palm of your hand, clearly when it touches a knee, is curved. So I find that interesting, just that contour around the knee. I think is pretty therapeutic with a hand to the knee and giving that reach outwards. Okay, so we're going to work on the lymph drain, the adductors, the groins, leg pit is what I like to call it, leg pits. So as you bend the knees, I want you to reach up as far as you can go, bend and swing the legs back to get the belt. That's a little easier than striving with your abdominals and the knees. So I swing the legs back, slide the feet together in the belt, and we're going to bring the knees into the chest and take the belt off the feet and get a hold of a block or ball. If you got a ball, get a ball. Okay, I want you to place that between the knees, and if it's a block, it's going to be at its most narrow. That's if you have a block between these, it would be narrow. That's all the difference. And you can tell when you swerve your knees side to side, the ball is a different, clearly, it's circular, so the knees can glide around it easier. Yeah, I like the round object. It's great for the bones. So I go side to side. I really want to swing into the back muscles. So we're going to complete the practice with some good effective hip and lower back work. So for me, the swinging side to side, I feel better going straight over versus to my shoulder. But you could go up towards your shoulder. Just depends on how you feel right now with it. We all have to find some layer of really scanning your individual experience. So having options is great. And one day you might find it's going to be different than the last time. For some reason, there's more blockage in an area. Okay? So next time you swing, now the swinging motion is really important on the bolster, side to side. You can't do this on a foam roller very well. You can do the same work, some of it on a foam roller, but it would really hurt this way. So you got soft cushion. Now, when you move the knees to the chest, I want you to push the bolster carefully down, and you're going to actually push the bolster, and I want you to scoot yourself closer to your wall. You near a wall? Okay. So hopefully you can find a wall. You might have to do a lot of glute strength to get here. Push the bolster to the wall. Make sure there's enough space between your position with your pelvis and the bolster that you'll be able to get a bridge pose out of this one. So press down. The feet are going to conform to the edge of the bolster, so it shouldn't be firm flat. They're going to flow into it. And as you lift the hips up, feel the front rim of the hip and the grip around the glutes. So lift and lower. I like to bring the knees into the chest in between sometimes, and then get the momentum and push and lift. I find this is a good rebound for my knees. Some days are challenging days, so sometimes the rebound work like this is easier for me. So you choose. You don't have to bring your knees into your chest at all. You can get extra credit. So stretch the arms back. If the blanket's too bulky, lower down the height. Just depends on your day, how it's going with your neck. Okay. Now, last time with the hip lift, I want you to take some consideration here. When you're pushing into your feet, your energy is likely pretty blended, right, in the sacrum, how it works down its way in towards the buttocks, and that weave, the sacrum, the triangular bone, and the movement out. It's a pretty cool design, really. So I want you to take your blocks. Feel a block between the knees, bring your knees in, take the block out. You're going to need two. You're going to slide the blocks by the pelvis and push them in. So the blocks are at the second setting. I push them up so they're right below my ribs. They're not up on my ribs at all. Some of us will be happier with them lower. Okay, now you can relax your glute gripping. You might soften a bit, but I want you to squeeze in if you've got the ball. A little bit of squeeze. Feel the complex here of the lower abdominals out to the rim of the hip. Feel the belly lift and lower, and that nice, pleasant circulation back to the heart. Even if this is just a science class for your inner lab, it's good work. Just the science of it. Again, if the blanket's too bulky, lower it down. It's up to you. So arms are down by the sides. Feel a little bit of pressure if you've got the ball into the ball. If it's pretty mushy, you're going to work harder on this for the pelvic floor. Okay. All right, now relaxing the shoulders back. Feeling where the hinge is at the knees, drops down to the heels. Then the connector up through the back line of the legs is hamstring. So we're going to push, and just the very slightest movement of the tailbone under, so you feel the glutes grip a little bit. You're going to push the blocks. I like to actually pivot them like so and kind of rest my hip on it for a second and then slide it out and lower down. You probably have other ideas too, but that's fine. So I'm going to put the blocks aside, and I'm going to massage the glutes again one more time before the final hip. So I'm going to push down, put the ball under the left buttock, and then move the hips side to side. If you don't have a ball, windshield wiper is always a good backup plan. You know, feet wider than hips, knees side to side. Again, the ball is nice because it's not going to put any harm into the knee joint movement. It's all about the connective tissue, right? That fascial releasing of pressure that grips up. So try to let that really glide across the tissues. Okay, other side. This likely when you do your hip stretch after you do a little bit of rebound rolling, you probably go a little farther is reality. But it has to be something you do right away. It's not like you could roll and then 10 minutes later you try the hip stretch. Because it doesn't last that long in the fibers, and you've only done a few seconds really. So it's something you follow up with. Okay, so take the ball out. If that feels rushed to you, keep rolling. And we're going to push the bolster to the right side. Now, if you're one that does the hip crossover with the bolster at your feet, you go right ahead into that. Some of us will have our bolster under our feet, left leg over, knees to the right. Easy for some. I like to put my leg over on the bolster, ball to the sacrum, below the sacrum, and then sand on the outer left thigh. Okay. So as we feel that move of the leg crossing with the sand on it, it gives you a little bit of progress and stretch across the lower back. You might have to push the ball in. What happens for me is after doing a little bit of the roll, it's a slight amount more mobility I have. It's really small, but I do notice the ball doesn't stay as well holding this pose. So for me, I go, oh, yeah, get a little itty bit of help. You can take any little bit that is useful. So turn your head maybe left or maybe center it, maybe an eye pillow. These final three poses, you have that choice of adding the eye pillow or a little towel or your sock. And feel that gradual ease, kind of flattening out that upper body. No bolster under the pelvis, just to the side. Feeling a comforting movement of breath, widening in the center, spanning out from the navel. And you might be used to the breath higher up in the body and the chest, so kind of feel that navel kind of radiation, right? That's a whole thing for breathing, but feeling that reach. Now feel that soaks in a little bit. You can always push the sand down, but when you do find that ability to rest the torso, and it's above the pelvis, so when I move the ball and I start to switch the side, I try to feel the point of shifting. I keep my upper body kind of basically still, and let the lower body move. If you've got your feet on the bolster, you just cross the right leg over, bring the knees to the left. If you've got a bolster in the side yard, you've got to move it. Yeah, and if that doesn't make sense for you, some of you might be wondering, well, I'm going to try the bolster under my feet. Okay, here's the options. This is for those of us bolster on the side, right arm open, ball to the sacrum, and those that have the bolster at the base. If it works for you, I mean, some of us might find this is a different enhancement, right? If it doesn't hurt your knee at all, there's zero knee issue. You might even not put the ball at the sacrum. You might put it under your knee over here or the block. It's interesting because the ball is sort of, doesn't really feel like it's there, but it's holding you up. It has a little bit of lift and a little bit of rebound. And the right arm is open as your head rolls to the right. I like this one sometimes, the feet at the bolster. It is nice. Just depends on how the knee receives it. And it's a little twistier in the back, which is for us in these basic restorative twists, right? You could consider the restorative twists are just as advanced as any other because they're about the same, aren't they? Unless you're doing a standing like revolved triangle, they're about the same intensity in the spine, and they're held longer, so they certainly have a little bit more of that hydration between the vertebrae, plumping up the vertebrae. That's our goal here. So feeling the abdominal motion, the ribs maybe. Now that would be good if I could get my ribs to move here. Just with the breath. So using your breath as a stretching tool. So feeling where the knee reaches to the left and where the right shoulder rounds down to the floor. And so you're trying to let the right shoulder center back. Great stuff for chest and shoulders. Simple rotation. Okay, now we're gonna slide the sand, and we're going to be using this for legs up the wall. So if you need to do any kind of rolling on the ball in your glute before you come up to the wall, that's fine. It's up to you. You decide you need to roll it out, fluff it up. But for some of us, we'll rock a little side to side. And I would recommend you roll to the side versus rolling on the spine to come up, like springing forward. So come around and move your bolster to the wall. So it's right there. That's why it's easy to do the hip crossover with the feet on the bolster, huh? You're already set up. So let's take it so that we sit with our rear close enough. If you have another blanket, I would use that on your torso. It's nice to have a blanket on you, especially in this time of year. Take care of yourself. So you're going to sit with your rear towards the wall on the edge of the bolster. You can almost, you can never get far enough over on the edge. So the bolster looks like it's kind of it's tilting up. But you're gonna roll and it's gonna flatten down. So you wanna roll, you're kind of a little bit eager to just roll up onto the bolster and then set yourself so that the back of the pelvis is a little lifted. And if you can take your sand, you'll grasp onto it and place it on the soles of the feet. Okay, you're going to get extra credit today for being here. All right, where's my other blanket? Oh, there it is. Okay. Blanket on torso. Okay, so I'm a little bit away from the wall, a little teeny bit. My legs aren't going to be flat at the wall. This is perfect. So placing the support, if you decide you'd rather have your eyes covered and don't have an eye pillow, you can always place it over your face too. You might even get used to that. Some people do this kind of thing, and they'll put 2 blocks to the side of your head, and so they're high enough, and the blanket goes across. So it's like you got a tent. That's kind of fun. The 2 block side, blanket over, you can close your eyes, and it's not pushing on you. Something new to try. Maybe you can try it on your free time. So arms down below the heart level, heart or below, so they can be up or a little down, and rest the brain. And take a few moments without any instruction to receive your practice. To survey the situation inside. Rest the shoulders. And let the body feel kind of the winter of it all, right? Whatever temperature you live in, still it is a darker time. So the body can use that, even the moments of a little more stillness, a little less doing, kind of hibernate. Feel the belly of your breath. The belly moves with the breath. The breath lands in the belly. But it doesn't stay, right? It always leaves. It comes in, it lets go. So it's kind of a cleanser. Using it to sweep the lungs and the body. Now feeling how the tailbone centers. It has a little elevation. So you want to find just the right degree of, really the intention is to reverse the flow of gravity to the heart. So you just trust the props to support that, which is the sand on the feet, kind of rushes that circulation, the lymph drain. It's going to intensify that flush. Bend the knees. And just shift the feet off the wall. Feel the change of circulation when you bend them more. And if you're concerned about too much bend in the knees, you can always let the sand fall overhead. Okay, that's safe for some of us in our environment. So bending the knees, you can drop the sand overhead or see if it'll make it into your hands and off to the side. And then feeling that if you've got the blanket, it's a nice massage into the abdominal organs here. Feels pretty good. And the hands at the back of the thighs, rock a little side to side. Make it so subtle that it doesn't feel like it's a deep pressure in your spine. It just kind of frolics on each side of the spinal column. The spinal frolic. And then roll to a side. And let your hands come down and bring you up to sitting. Take a seat on your bolster. Feel that the wall is as important as the seat to bring the spine to its natural lift. Right, being in a body, right, finding that the spine is essential for us, right, to produce that circulation that spans from the extremities back to the center vine. Bring the hands up to your center vine and rest your eyes, closing head down to the heart. And as you center into your heart, breathing slow and with exhalations, bowing into that space behind your heart.